You're totally ready? I'm totally ready.
Watch this stretch.
Yeah, get that stretch going.
Are we already live?
Oh yeah,
Is this happening live?
absolutely. I would not let the audience miss this. Welcome to another episode of Owlbear Soup. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Justin.
And I'm your other host, Rich. Hi.
Oh man, how's it going?
It's really good. It's a great Sunday morning. I'm happy to be here with some soup, you know?
Speaking of soup, check this
Oh yeah.
out.
Wait, hold on. That's a shirt and a mug. That's awesome. I want one. I want one so bad. Wait,
Have
really?
a mug. Yeah, just
Really?
yeah.
Really?
Here,
Really?
just grab it.
Oh. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's so nice of
Yeah,
you.
of course. Sorry, that was so nerdy. It was so much fun though.
These are really, really cool. I like these a lot. Thank you so much for designing and creating these.
Yeah, well, the art, of course, is Rebecca Hicks, and then I just basically took our stuff and threw it on Stream Elements to see what it looks like. T-shirts are great. They're the nice kind of, ones with the really easy tag to tear out, and yeah, they run a little small, so I would order a size up, but otherwise, it's awesome. I'm super happy with it, which is why I asked for that great introduction. Anyway, so this week's topic.
That's super cool.
Yeah, this week's topic is we're going to be diving into the DMG, looking at some of the optional and variant rules that you can use in your game. This was kind of inspired by the whole piety discussion with last month's Unearthed Arcana. But before we dive into that topic, I think we probably have a couple news things to talk about, or even just talk about our week. So, Rich, hey, how was your week?
Well, I do want to say for the chat, I almost spilled that coffee. I have my DMG right here in front of me. And I was a little bit worried about spilling my coffee on it because that was overly dramatic. And it's very full of fresh, piping hot coffee. So that was going to be great. I'm very excited. Rebecca Hicks is an affiliate on Twitch. That's so cool. Doing all sorts of amazing stream work there. I want to check it out really, really bad. Rebecca's amazing.
Yeah. I was watching it a little bit earlier today, and she was just drawing ellipses and circles everywhere, and it was fantastic. It was so fun to watch.
I love watching art streams. That's so cool. Okay. Yeah. So that's what I want to be doing. What have I been doing with my week? Oh my gosh.
Oh, nice.
Camp.
Oh,
I've been camping.
You did. Yeah, summer camp.
Yeah, summer camp. Summer camp just wrapped up this week, so that is very exciting. We had our end of the camp concert yesterday, end of summer, with the double clicks, and it was fantastic.
Nice.
Bunch of kids came and got to see that, and they were all like geeking out in the chat about their shared adventures, because while every week is unique and they're all doing their things, a lot of their stories had some similar themes through them. Like I certainly had a golden orb that they could find. It was like a crystal ball style spell implement, and it would whisper to you. It had a voice, and it was a very annoying voice. It would tell you about treasure nearby, and most of the treasure nearby is like the gold that your friends have in their pockets that I told you about like 5 minutes ago. So it was very frustrating. They loved it because they were like, this thing, it's evil. It's great. It'll show me treasure and bring me power. And technically those things are true.
Yep.
But it didn't do it in a very great way. And so it was always like 5 people wanted to steal it, or they all wanted to throw it away, or they wanted to give it away, or they thought it would corrupt the headmat. It was great.
So good.
So they all talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how many people fought dragons. We talked about how many people hated Ranger Rick. Because it's a lot of people. I made that character terrible.
And for those of us those who missed it on Monday, we had the double clicks on our special Monday streams, and we also took on Ranger Rick. And all I have to say is, I think we fixed him. I don't think he's going to cause any more trouble after we're done.
No. He's learned a valuable lesson, and is trapped in a submarine.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So
that is awesome. What else happened this week? Very daring game of Werewolf over Slack that I'm playing. We had our big thrilling conclusion last night. It was one of those like you play werewolf and you get to the end and it's super tense and everybody's like, let's go, let's go, let's keep going. And so in that game, every day is a day and night cycle that happens within like a 2 hour span. But we were like, no, it's the conclusion. So we did like 3 days right in a row, and I'm just watching. I'm already
Yeah.
dead. But we're all here in chat, like watching in our private wacky stuff going on. And then we all jumped on Zoom afterwards and did a big debrief and then played Jackbox games. Like it was a very positive experience.
Who ended up being the werewolf?
Um,
Or I guess I mean people maybe not know these people. More importantly, did the werewolf win or did the villagers win?
it was wild. It was at the very last minute a werewolf won. And it got down to 3 people. And it was definitely like these 2 people hate each other, and the third person is the werewolf standing back, going like, "Oh no, I don't know who to pick," which is so good. Um, we vote on a poll, and basically when time hits, the poll ends, and those are the final votes for who you were going to eliminate from the village. And one person was just flipping their vote back and forth. They just couldn't decide. They weren't sure, and at the last second, they flipped it off the werewolf, and the village lost, and it was
Oh no.
amazing.
Oh no. Oh no.
So it's wild because you play werewolf in public, right? And if you're one of the ghosts, you just have to be kind of quiet, like off to the side, whispering. In this one, we're all just in our own private chat. They can't possibly hear us. We are shouting. There's gifs everywhere. It's a very different experience.
Oh, that's so good. So good. For me, gaming this week, we had D&D, and they finished off the Wildwood level, which is a strange level in the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, because you kind of go there and like there's like it's like you're outside, right? You know, there's like a cool breeze or a warm breeze depending on what
Mhm.
season it is. There's seasons. There's no
Cool.
ceiling. It's a sky above you, ish.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it was a ton of fun, and we reached a really good kind of like mid. There is a ceiling. It's weird, and and we kind of reached this cool little pinnacle, I think, in the adventure that we're running together, and and it's not necessarily the normal Dungeon of Mad Mage adventure, but it's it's an alteration of it, and so we kind of reached a midway point. It's about halfway. The characters just hit level 9, and we're about to get really deep into it. So we're taking a break for the rest of August so that I have some time to prep, some time to kind of refresh my brain a little bit. We've been playing this for a while. They've hit level 9. That takes a bit. So we're gonna take a break for the rest of August, and then we're gonna pick back up in September, and they're gonna hopefully finish out the campaign. I doubt by the end of the year, probably by this time next year. So, but that's cool. That's fun.
I like that. You mentioned seasons in there. I was curious, is that a tie-in back to Waterdeep Dragon Heist and the seasonal villain, or is this a brand new, like, do the seasons pass rapidly?
Yeah, so spoilers for anybody who hasn't run this yet. I'll give you like 2 seconds. That was like 2 seconds.
Sure.
So there's a druid who kind of runs this entire level.
Okay.
And in her tower, she has a calendar, and she can adjust it and adjust the day, night cycle, seasons, that type of stuff pretty easily from there. So
cool. That's very cool.
Whatever her whim was. So what I did was I used, and this wasn't in the book, but I used the seasons to represent her mood. So, when everyone arrived, it was fall, so it was very nice and cool, nothing too drastic going on. And when she got angry, it was summer and it was just blaring heat and that type of stuff. So it was cool.
Very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the kind of level I would want to run out of a dungeon level. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
It was a weird level. I loved it. Let's see here. And then so and Aubrey's mentioning in a chat, so everyone's kind of has like unique not curses so much, but unique things that have happened to them. And this is also another very pivotal point for those where, the person who had died and now she has a special bow that's tied to her somehow, like things are going to happen with that. Aubrey got some very interesting powers based on when she made some deals back at level 1 or 2,
Yes.
and so I'm starting to bring these up, and a lot of these kind of, and we may even touch on it a little bit today with our normal story, is they're kind of taking the form of like boons. So they're extra feats, extra abilities, little things like this to kind of help get you a little bit more powerful.
That's very
make it a
cool.
little more fun.
I just on the very last day, some of my students were at this necromancer's tower that no one else had ever been to. So it was like thrilling me coming up with what's in there in the last moment. It was great.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to put a deal in there because I think deals are a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so there was a small portal, and they had a book under it. They could read it, and they realized they could gain a magic weapon suited to them, but they would have to pay a cost to do it. I gave them. They're out in the Arctic basically at this point. They're about to fight a white dragon. They know cold damage is coming, so it was you can get vulnerability to cold damage forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I will give you a magic item.
Yeah.
And one of the kids was like, "Heck yeah, bring it on!"
Oh man, poor Aubrey. I put her in a really bad situation, and in order for her to get out of it, she had to sign a contract that she couldn't read. And so, it's written in Infernal, and so she had no clue what she was signing. She just was like, "Okay, well, I get to survive this and all this stuff." So.
Yeah. I said that the book was written, it was like an IKEA manual. It was written in Draconic and then again in Infernal and then again in maybe Abyssal, I'm not sure. And so they had a little bit more chance to find out what the deal was in advance.
Yeah. No.
They got lucky. They had one of those.
Oh, yeah, I'm a jerk. So.
No, that sounds fun. Because then, right? You get to find out what the consequences are. You signed in. All's good.
You should have done it like Google Translate style, where you first took it in Common, but then you translated it to Abyssal, then you translated to Giant. You translated the Abyssal to Giant, and the Giant to something else, and you eventually made its way around. Because then it becomes a puzzle. You have to have the right people with the right languages.
Oh my gosh. You have to go track down people who speak all those languages in reverse order to figure out what's going on. They're like, what? It's like reverse telephone.
All right. Let's see. Okay, so a couple quick news items before we get into story of the week. And this is pretty interesting to me. Well, first off, there's a new Unearthed Arcana out. There's 2 new subclasses. They seem like they're going to be very much set for the revision of Curse of Strahd. We're not going to do a special episode on this one, I don't think. Neither of us were particularly impressed with them. So I don't like doing negative podcasts, so we're not going to do it because I don't want to talk a bunch of trash.
I will say I like the themes of those. They felt very villainous, like the special options in the DMG, and I like those because they give me that ability to make enemies that are slightly more powerful. Their classes are pretty darn cool, and I like that.
Yep.
Like the Cleric of Death, holy cow.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah, and there was a couple of things like speaking to spirits. Like I liked the idea of it and where it was going, but there's just not enough control to make it a useful player perk, like a useful class perk. Now, if that was something you gave to a player as a feat or something, cool. But anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Also, I like D&D, so we're going to hear some more D&D news.
Yes.
The Great Dalmoody is being resurrected as a Dungeons & Dragons card game.
No way. No, you send me a link right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? That's amazing.
Yeah. I'll send you the link, and I'll post a link in the show notes for the YouTube followers.
Wow.
And actually,
I love that game.
What? I can go ahead and post this link in the chat for the folks who are here if they want to check that out. Well, that's a hot mess of a link. So whatever. I copied it from my notes. You guys can sort it out.
I appreciate that. I'm going to have to check that out. Great Dalmoody is a game, I don't even know how many times I've played it. I couldn't tell. I've had to buy extra decks because I've worn decks out. I love that game.
Yeah. Yeah, no markdown on the chat. My note-taking thing converts everything to markdown to make life easier for me. So anyway, I played a lot of Great Dalmoody, and it was always especially popular among the drama nerds. So
yeah, it was a natural progression from Hearts, which I played way too much, and then the Great Dalmoody is just I like trick-taking games. I think they're a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
and then my last piece of announcement, this is specifically for me. Cryptozoic has announced there's going to be a new DC deck building game. A new game for the DC universe. This could be called Dark Knights Metal. And this expansion is just going to pump a bunch of new cards for me to go buy and play, and I'm super excited.
That is very cool.
I love that game.
So this is all Batman all the time.
Uh, so
Bat
pretty
fam.
much, yeah. So Batman Metal was a series written um, not too long ago, but the dark mirror version of the universe started to invade, and so each of these planets, or each of these, whatever, we'll just say other planets, multiverses had variations of the heroes that we know and love in the DC universe, and so now, but in their particular universe, they got corrupted somehow in something different, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's a really interesting series. It's a little over the top, but when you have something called metal, it needs to be a little metal and over the top. So
Oh, metal. I was thinking like metal, like
oh
maybe like our toughness or
yeah,
something. I wasn't sure.
rock
Got it.
rock on
Got it.
metal. Yeah, so that's what I have for news. Should we go
Cool.
ahead and jump into our topic du jour?
I just want to
Yeah.
jump in real quick and mention the Cortex RPG is not a system I've played too much. It's designed by Cam Banks, right?
Mhm.
But they have just announced that they are coming out with the Masters of the Universe RPG to come out in the not too distant future with the new show. I'm not really
Oh
sure.
man, I love
Um,
it.
Mattel is all in
I
on
already
it.
love it.
I know. Every time I think about Masters of the Universe, I remember all those ridiculous characters,
Right?
and I get excited.
Yeah.
I had too many of them.
I hope part of making your character is like rolling on a table of like weird like phrases or things that you're not supposed to put together. And it's like, all right, well, we have Man of War over here. So on the other side, of course, we have Cheese Knife. I
Yeah. Every time you make a character, you have to make its opposite number
right,
on the other.
exactly.
Um, and they have to just never be able to hurt each
Right,
other.
right. All right. Let's go ahead and jump over into screen share zone.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready with my mug.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's start talking a little bit about some of the optional rules found in the DMG, and how we can use them or how we personally use them. I wanted to go ahead and start with renown. Renown it was used in both of the Magic the Gathering books, in fact, right? Because one of them you could gain renown with all the different guilds, and the other one they used a variation of the variation called piety. And piety is essentially your it's your renown with a god. So what we saw in with the piety before was that they've done some interesting things with it, but at a base level, what it does is it helps you keep track of how you interact with these different guilds and what your ranks are in these guilds. And because the idea was for Forgotten Realms, so we have the guilds, the Harpers, Order of the Gauntlet, Emerald Enclave, Lord's Alliance, Centaurum. And these are just the base ones, right? You can definitely like add as many factions as you want, and you can kind of gain ranks.
Right. I've written a few. They're fun. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, but it doesn't really kind of go into nearly as much as far as like the perks as they went into in the newest Magic the Gathering book, which is Mythic Odysseys of Theros. I had to go look over on my shelf.
Right. Here you just get a title.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
Right.
And some vague bonuses.
Yeah, you get some interesting things with downtime activities. You have the ability to use downtime to kind of gain more rank and that type of stuff. And that's pretty cool. And then, once again, digging into piety, very, very light versions of what we saw in that book. So anyway.
Nice. Yeah, I love this because the thing I want to do and the thing I'm always interested in with organizations is like, at what level can you show up at their doorstep and be like, look, can I have a healing potion? Or, can I stay in a safe house? Can I hide someone here?
Yeah.
And I want that stuff to be clear. Like, I love that. I think that's really powerful and a good way to give players agency and know what their expectations are. So I love this. If I were doing it, I would try to build that in a little bit more.
Yeah.
With your characters, just let them know, like, if I'm a Stingblade in the Lord's Alliance, what does that mean exactly? How does that affect the world?
Yeah.
But if you do that, it's a great system.
Yeah, this is definitely something that I kind of do in the background on a spreadsheet a little bit, but we don't deal a lot with factions in my current game. But I've definitely I've taken it completely out of the player's hands. Like, they don't track any of it. I track it all on a spreadsheet. I
Nice.
think if I were to do it in the future and I wanted to play more with this type of stuff, I'd probably have the players track it.
Yeah, yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's kind of fun to track.
Yeah.
It's one of those little
Hmm.
scores where I kind of want to know where I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I put it on a scale from -10 to 10, right? And I use that kind of methodology as opposed to what they suggest in here. But I like what they suggest in here, and I think if in the future I might do that.
Very cool.
All right. So a big amount of the optional rules are in this chapter 9, which is the Dungeon Master's Workshop. I don't know how many people actually dig into the DMG and go here. Usually, I think most people grab the DMG and they use it to look for magical items, and that's about it, right?
Yep.
There's so much good stuff. And in fact, before this episode even started, we were talking about like, oh man, there's so much good stuff in this DMG. We're probably gonna have to do more
Yeah.
DMG sessions to kind of talk about all the cool things in here.
It's such a good book, and I think it is as far as I can tell, the least read book.
Yeah.
At the same time, because you get a sense about what DMing is, and you feel like, well, I can make it up. I don't need this stuff, and so you just kind of let it
Yep.
go, except for magic items.
Right. And in this chapter 9 starts off with a very, very important thing to ask yourself before you put any kind of custom rule, variant rule, house rule, anything in there. It says, ask yourself these 2 questions. Will this rule improve the game? Will my players like it?
Oh my gosh, those are 2 good questions to ask.
Right. And so, kind of as we're going through these, I'm going to be asking myself these. It's like, is there a game where this would improve the game? Do I have players that would enjoy this kind of shenaniganery?
Exactly. Right. So thinking about questions of like complexity, is this going to make it too difficult to play my turn? Do I get too much AP analysis paralysis going on?
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
let's think through it.
So, the first whole chunk is ability options. So this is looking at things like other ways to use your ability scores, other ways to do proficiencies primarily, but there's a few other cool things in here. Kicking it off, proficiency dice. I like the proficiency dice rule. So what the proficiency dice rule is, instead of getting a proficiency bonus, you get a die. So, level 1 to 4, you have a +2 proficiency bonus. So instead you get a D4, right? So you'd roll a D20 and a D4, and that would be your result.
Yeah, I will say that this simplifies the system, honestly. The tiny bit of math that 5th Ed expects from you is when you make a dexterity check, if you're proficient, you need to add your dex bonus +2, and that's what you roll. Suddenly, especially, I'm thinking about this a lot, playing with kids, but like, if I could just say, if you chose to be proficient in this, you get to roll an extra D4,
Mhm.
and otherwise, your attack bonus, it's a dex check. That's what it is.
Right.
Like that actually simplifies the game, I think.
It really does. And I think this is a great tool for a lot of those, like, if you have either established gamers or you just have a set of new players at the table, like either end of those. I think for the middle road, where most people are just play D&D and they've played multiple editions and they're very used to a certain style of math, I think we don't use this. But if you have like, those groups who have been playing D&D for 20 plus years and then have also played like 9 bajillion other RPGs, this might be fun. And on the flip side,
Right.
exactly like you said, like, you have some new players. All right, we just change the character sheet a little bit and say, all right, here's where you roll in an additional D4 and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's and that die type is going to go up. I think that's
Yeah.
really neat. That feels good if I'm thinking about a lot of different game types out there where we roll lots of dice. It gets frustrating for new players to come in and be like, well, cool, I'm going to play. I got all my dice, I'm ready to go, but all you roll is a D20 and then maybe like a D6. Like, now I get to roll more dice, which makes me happy.
Yeah, especially coming from, systems like Shadowrun or Warhammer or any of that type of stuff. It's a ton of fun to roll a ton of dice, right?
Yeah. Wow. This is so wild in that I just think I've skipped over this table so many times, and now I'm like, why don't I use this in every game I play? It's because I'd have to teach a new rule, and it goes against our expectations, but still, it's great.
Yeah, and there's a great point made in the chat, is that you no longer have a hard lower limit though, which is true. You're dealing with averages a little bit more. It's also it's going to be a lot more swingy. So, if that's an aspect of your game, I think that's a great point that I didn't even think about. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's valuable, right? Like, are the stories you're telling ones that your heroes are more lucky than skilled too, right? That could be part of it. It's like,
Yeah, that's true. At lower levels, this is a lot easier. If I were playing like Dragon Heist, maybe,
mhm,
where I'm only expecting it to get to 5th level,
yeah,
this feels okay because that difference is so minimal. But totally right. Like at high levels, I'd so much rather have a +6 than a D12
yeah,
variance. Um,
yeah, yeah.
hmm, I'll think about. Yeah, good point. Very
Very
good
good
point.
point. Yeah.
Okay, that's why I don't use it all the time because I thought of this. That's such a good point.
hmm So the next variant is going to be kind of the skill variance, and this one, it's your skills are based on your ability modifiers essentially, and your ability modifiers are adjusted by class. So if you're a barbarian, you can use strength, dexterity, wisdom ability checks with your proficiency bonus, but you don't have
Ah,
specific skills, right? So it's like if you're calling for like an athletics check, you would just roll a strength check, but as a barbarian, you'd get to add your proficiency bonus.
hmm.
It's a it's a big simplification of the rules. So you would get as a um, as a player. I think I'll have to reread the rules now that I'm talking about it, but you get one or two for your class. You get one for your background, and then I think you get one for your race. So, it's I don't know. This one's not my favorite. It's a simplification ish of the rules, but I think it's actually more
Yeah,
complicated.
I think so too. And it takes away that bit of agency that I really like in the game. I like playing off type, so you know,
Mm-hmm.
this means. Well, I mean, I guess I say that out loud. This certainly means a paladin will never be proficient in religion unless you can dive in somewhere else.
Yeah, and then you could pick that
Just
up from your background or some other
yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah. I don't like this. That's
Yeah,
tricky. Too
that's tricky.
much.
Right, yeah. Five Iron Fanatic puts a good question in the chat as well. As a DM, would you use proficiency dice for combat? Stat blocks assume standard proficiency, which would be tricky to convert on the fly. Well, that is one thing that they actually point out in that section, and I'm not going to scroll around to find it. Is that you don't use the proficiency die for monsters. You just use their
Right.
static number, and that's just for ease of use.
Wow. I keep thinking I'm gonna think about that a whole
Mm-hmm.
lot, like just mathematically. I really like that idea. That concept is very
Mm-hmm.
cool. But like we were talking about this with one of the DMs or the Unearthed Arcana sets. That too much variability is a negative at higher levels, which is the case here as well.
Yeah. All right. This one I kind of like is the background proficiencies. So the background proficiency idea is that characters don't have skill or tool proficiencies. Anything that would grant a character a skill or tool proficiency has no benefit. Instead, the character can add their proficiency bonus to any ability check which the character's prior training and experience supports. Right. So the idea is, and I think the use they use is character A comes from like a noble background, and they want to use their charisma check to secure an audience with the king. So because they've had that background as a noble in X,
Yeah.
Y, and Z, then they get to use their proficiency bonus. It's not necessarily even like a persuasion check. It's like okay, yeah, no, that's perfect. You use your charisma and you add your proficiency bonus because your background kind of applies with this. I think that's great.
Yeah, I like this because it adds that moment for narration that I want out of an RPG,
Mhm.
right? It's not, well, check your proficiencies. Are you proficient in cook supplies? It's someone going, well, look, my background is a cook. I'm sure that I learned how to make this specific cuisine. I want to get in there. I'm proficient in this, right?
Mhm.
Um, it's more specific and gives players agency, like over their role playing bit.
Yeah.
I think we always need more of that.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to toss this in my game in addition to normal skill proficiencies out of the PHB. Like if a player
Yeah,
said, "Okay, well, because of my pirate background, I think I should be able to use acrobat, or I should be able to use my dexterity to swing from the rafters, even though I'm not trained in acrobatics." And I go, "Absolutely, you can. Boom, do it." Right?
right. And now also, I mean, that changes another thing too, because sometimes players will say that for advantage
Mm-hmm.
purposes. Like, well, this is a thing. My character did this really, really hard. Can I have advantage on this check or something? And I never want to, because that starts changing like the mechanics of the game a little bit in a way that I'm not sure. With kids, I let it go because yeah, awesome.
Right.
Bring in your background. I love it. But I love this that it's coming in on this much more baseline level, giving you that proficiency bonus. That's very cool.
Yeah, yeah, it gives it, and it really makes you think about what your background is and how you want to be
Mhm.
able to use it too.
Yeah. You might be proficient with turducken, but not be reliable to make blowfish sushi that won't poison diners, right? If you just have proficiency in cook supplies, that's what you can do at all, apparently. But
Mhm.
I like that now it's up to the players to decide, where their proficiency lies. It's a very cool idea.
Yeah, yeah, and Five Iron Fanatic, of course, brings up another good topic. Background proficiency is good if your players are committed to having a robust backstory. If one of them isn't, they can go on, one extreme or the other, feeling left out. But
Yeah.
or also, yeah, my character's totally into that. Yeah, that's definitely a thing to consider, right? When you're thinking about
Mm.
this, is one of those questions: is this good for the game, or is this good for my players? Right.
Right. So this one time, because I was a chef, but it was in a noble court, and then the noble was like big into history, so I should get a bonus. I'm proficient in
Yeah.
history. Right.
Which
um,
Yeah, which I'm a big fan of saying yes. So like a
yeah.
lot of times I'd be like, okay, well tell me more about that, and then if it works, right? Um, and actually like Five Iron Fanatic brings up a great point about this. I'm not a big backstory writer. I don't write a huge
Mhm.
backstory. I write a couple sentences typically at most, unless the DM specifically needs something longer. Then I'll dig into it. But
Right.
for me, that might not be, you know, might not be the best kind of lineup. All right. So personality trait proficiency. This one's great. Let me make sure I didn't cut it off. This one I like, but this one's even more into the role play. You have to have a very specific role play group for this. So with this one,
Mhm.
it's more your proficiencies are more based off the traits that you picked in
Yeah.
character generation. And also, this is another one that's bad for me because traits are optional rules, so I often don't use them. Uh,
Oh.
yeah,
Cool.
especially when I'm building characters.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
fair.
I think it's a great tool if you're struggling to come up with your personality. I think it's a great tool if you're a new player and you're trying to just. There's so much to handle. Like figuring out all this stuff is just too much. Um,
Yeah.
I don't use traits personally, but if a player of mine had a trait or an ideal or bond or flaw that kind of aligned with a reason for them to get their proficiency bonus, I'd totally do it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I often use these for advantage and disadvantage situations or inspiration,
Mm-hmm.
which is a thing I'm terrible at doing, is handing out inspiration. So that's what I usually use these traits for. Um, the thing I'm thinking about with these that is going to come up is both of these rules will make your game longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, right? Suddenly, instead of just, well, I know exactly what my role is, now I got to think about it. We need to have a conversation, right? It is going to lengthen the amount of time this specific moment will take in the game. So as long as you're doing that in a way that is fun for all players, if they can somehow engage and build in together, that would be good. This would be very frustrating. I know I've played Blades in the Dark a few times and had this happen to me. Someone is trying to do their backstory thing and it goes on for 5-10 minutes and I'm just out of that. That would be frustrating.
Let's see here.
So given the right players, this could be
Yeah,
very good.
yeah, that could be a ton of fun with the right players. But once again, is it fit with my current group? Um, you know, I, and I think it's kind of cool to have it as an add-on as
Yeah,
well. All right. Oh, text messages. Okay.
yeah.
Let's see here. Let's see. So that was personality trait proficiency. Let's talk about hero points. Hero points. I love the idea of hero points, but I never actually use them. Um, Hero points, you starting at level 1, you get 5 hero points, and each time the character gains a level, he or she loses unspent hero points until a new total equals 5 plus half the character's level. Yeah, I don't know. You could use them for various things. Specifically, like you can add a d6 to a d20, turning possible failures into successes, that type of stuff.
Right. I mean, these are definitely neat. I do like games that have you have a resource that guarantees your success in certain situations, and they can be expended. This would also be a thing that you could do as a DM. Say like, all right, well, this attack is frightening, so frightening that it drains you of a hero points or something. You could like turn this into a weird back
Mm-hmm.
and forth. It's a cool addition. It's like you have Bard Inspiration whenever you want. So I'm sorry, Bards. I don't know. It doesn't hit me. I do like action points, hero points. I like the concept behind it. Um, but it's often going to be like advantage. I give my players advantage at the start of the session that they can use once during the game.
Mm-hmm.
And usually we get to the end of the session and no one's used their advantage.
Right.
Or inspiration rather.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, what I've well, and it's one of the variant rules I think we're actually going to go over is I used a variant inspiration where the players award each other inspiration.
Oh yeah.
So, it's I like that ability, but also now I'm doing it on Roll20, and I have the proficiency cards that I can pass out, and they stay with your character, and they do cool things. It's pretty
Oh
cool.
nice. That is very cool.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see here.
Glad to hear it. So hero points don't jazz me too much. Although I mean it's useful. It is a good way to make your characters more heroic. It's very easy to define. I don't think death saves are all that scary already. I mean I haven't played in a super deadly campaign, so maybe that's a cool bonus is getting that free success. But
yeah. I agree with Angstaza. Is that she says I know very well who my character is and vaguely what their past was like, but individual anecdotes, they're Schrodinger's true until I get to discuss them with somebody.
that's very good.
Yeah,
That's a very good line. Yeah.
that is absolutely how I set up my characters. It's like I know my character's history and background. I'm not going to sit there and write it all out. And sometimes it's going to change based on like the interactions I have with other people to build a better story.
Yes, I agree with that. It's fun to come up with it in the moment with other people. I think that stuff is great. I've been talking to my students and for background, just since we're talking about it, the things that I care about as a DM for background are if you can give me an NPC that I can throw into the world or an organization that I can have around. That stuff's good for me. The rest of it, like, have it or don't have it.
Absolutely.
You know, like bring it up organically. That's what really matters.
Yeah, no, and I once again agree with Oxtasa. I want the chance to have those discussions, and I want the chance to make my character more robust. But I want to do it in character. I want to do it in the scene. I don't want to like do it beforehand. So anyway, love it.
There are too many times when I play a game and my character changes the second session because I see how the group works, and I'm like, nah, it's not gonna. I got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one, of course, is new ability scores. Honor and sanity. Honor's very good for very specific systems. If you're doing something very, knight or samurai-esque, or having that kind of honor, or a lot of court stuff, those types of things where honor is important. I think it's a cool ability. I've never played in that kind of game before, so I don't have a lot of experience with it. I know Teos, he plays a lot of the Legend of the Five Rings, and so that deals a lot with honor, and it's very interesting the way he talks about using it, and he's talked about using it like for writing like haikus in court and things like that, and some of the very interesting things they do in that system. But it's not one I'm familiar with, and it's not one that I would put into a campaign because I don't run those types of campaigns.
Yeah, it's like our old school paladins and having that very very specific code. Like paladin is in fifth ed is as coded as I want a character to be. Honestly,
Yeah.
That's pretty vague. You can kind of make your own decisions, and if you stray a little bit, everything's gonna be fine.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, I love running horror games. I have most of the horror books that have been written since third ed probably. And I will say one of my favorite things, I'm going to just jump in real quick. I love Betrayal at House on the Hill. They recently put out a Scooby-Doo version, and they finally renamed Sanity to Courage in that game, and that's exactly what it should be changed to, right? Because or the new the new Call of Cthulhu that's oh gosh, what's that company?
It's not Green Ronin.
No, but they did an entire like fundamental rethinking of the system to get rid of sanity as a concept in the game, and focus it more on courage, was where it should be.
Agreed. And and I agree with that. I've never played with sanity. It's not appealing to me. there are some options that we'll get to that I think is more appealing than using sanity as it was. But I never heard courage before. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like I'm totally into that idea. And that's it in using some of these rules, right? Like they talk about here's some ways to incorporate these skills. Going with courage is fantastic. You know, it's like I would totally like, oh, well, if I dump statted it, right? If I dump statted my courage and it was an 8, I would play the heck out of that. If I
Right?
made my courage like a 16, I would totally play the heck out of that, right?
Mhm.
So
Yep. Yep. Right, because it now I've got this fundamental thing about my character, which sometimes is in our backstory stuff, but otherwise it doesn't come out unless you're a paladin and you take an aura of courage. That's it.
right.
You know? But I think it's really fun. So I like that concept here, how they've got sanity set up. I'm not super excited about it, but I do like that there are events in the game that are going to be so strange that they are going to be like, eye-opening moments. And how do we play those in a game? The core rules don't do a great job of that.
Oh,
Besides, I don't know, charisma saving throw. I don't know.
right.
So I'm more excited about that.
Yeah, no.
Which we've got coming.
No, now I'm just thinking about courage, and I'm super into that. Anyway, so fear and horror, I do like these rules. I think they're kind of fun. The idea of fear, using that when chaosism. Thank you, Aubrey. Chaosium.
Oh yes, perfect.
Chaosium. There we go. Yeah. I'm super into fear. The idea that sure, you're facing this huge, gigantic monster, and you're just 5 piddly little like humanoids. Like, yeah, you might have some fear with this. Maybe this is a fight that you weren't supposed to get into, but now you have to overcome this certain level of fear too to even like do it. Even maybe you have a secret weapon or something, right? It's cool. I like fear.
Right, and I like this. It's set here as a wisdom saving throw, which means who's going to be good at this. We're gonna rangers, paladin. There's a couple folks that need to have high wisdoms. Now I'm just in my head thinking about the start of the game. Like if it's going to be a horror based campaign, let's have a courage stat. I don't know how it's going to be defined yet, but make a courage saving throw, and if you fail, you're frightened for 1 minute. You can't. Frightened isn't that bad. It's I get disadvantage to attack that target, and I can't step closer to that target, which I think is fantastic for a role playing sense.
Absolutely.
I'm going to attack something else. I'm actually frightened of that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I like frightened, and I like fear, and I like courage a lot. I'm super into all these things. Horror is interesting in that this is more than just like going up against odds where you should be afraid. This is a lot more on the lines of like, I don't. You come against these horrific circumstances that are just so like awful that it's just you don't know how to react. It's beyond fear. It's a more visceral reaction in my head. And no, it's cool, and I love that this one uses the other strength of your willpower. It uses charisma, right? The other side of willpower besides wisdom. Are you able to use that force of charisma in your head to just kind of push through and go forward, or is this just so awful that you just break? I like it. I like it a lot.
Yeah, this definitely plays into. I mean, fear I like a lot. This one has got that like whatever the Cthulhu-esque ideas. So I want to dive in and see what's going on with what they have in the madness rules here. Gosh, I wish we had that rewritten in a different way, because I do. There are some things that you're just like, okay. They're kind of scary to deal with in a game. I don't know. I might. Yeah. But I also wouldn't just want to simplify it to like an opposite turn undead. I just run away. Like 5 Iron Fanatic points out, the one where you run away screaming is so frustrating in a game, a heroic game.
Yeah.
That this changes it to something else, puts consequences somewhere else. But I don't.
Yeah.
I don't exactly like how they do it.
Yeah, it's definitely something where and I like playing and I like running games where my characters are heroes, right? I expect them to do heroic things, and I'm gonna throw awful things at them, and I want them to survive. And I want them to continue being heroic. And turning tail and running is not a heroic act. Like being frozen
No.
in place, but still standing there and fighting the good fight, even though you're struggling because of the frightened condition. That's pretty
Yes.
heroic, and that's awesome.
Yeah. So I like fear. I would certainly at the very start of the game talk to people about whether we're going to involve any sort of deeper horror
Mhm.
rules. Uh, just because, yeah, that's a harder deal.
Yeah,
But fear, I
I
like
think
that.
for horror, you kind of need to have the right campaign. Like I
Yep.
wouldn't throw horror randomly into the campaign I'm running now because it's not a horror campaign. It's a heroic campaign. Something like even Strahd, the way it's written, is more of a heroic campaign than a horror campaign in my head.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know where this fits, but it's
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
All right, healing is always fun to talk about.
This is making it harder to heal. Fun.
Yeah, I mean, I already struggle with the 1 hour short rest and 8 hour long rest, but um, that's just because I was such a fourth edition player. But some of these rules are, if you want to add more realism into your pretend games that you play with your friends, like there's some of these things there, and that's and I jokingly say that, right? It's some people love this additional level of
It is true.
complexity, this additional level of difficulty in your game. And so what this section does is gives a few variant options that you can use to help facilitate players who want that. For example, healer's kit dependency. Well, you can't spend any hit dice unless someone expends the use of a healer's kit to bandage your wounds. I mean, it's not majorly game breaking, right? I think it would be good in a campaign along the lines like a Dark Sun campaign. That might be kind of fun, where survival is such a important part of the campaign. So in resources, keeping track of resources, that's having all those things together, I think is great. But in a general heroic campaign, I'm not into it.
No. It just takes too much tracking. It's just something I don't need. I don't think it helps.
As a fourth edition fan, I do love the optional rule for healing surges. I think this is fun. I'm almost tempted to try this in my next game to see how it balances things off. I even like this optional rule for folks who aren't super familiar with healing surges. So during the combat, you can spend an action to spend a certain amount of your hit dice, up to half of your hit dice. Fantastic. I love it. Done. Piece of cake.
Right.
And you could do that once a long rest. Or short or long rest. And then for a more superheroic effect, I love this. Feel free to let your characters use a healing surge as a bonus action rather than an action. Oh, wow. That's awesome.
That's a lot of action economy changes.
Right.
That's
yeah.
wild.
And I love the idea of doing different things with action economy. So I'm definitely into the idea of healing surges.
I would certainly say that if you do it, make sure that the fighter ability for healing surges becomes a free action.
Yeah. Let's see here. Angstaza points out, she says, healer's kit is as monolithic is a bit weird if we're going to be realistic. Yeah, no, that is a little, it's still a little weird. And, it's like, and for me personally, like that's not the kind of realism I'm going after.
No. I mean, this is also a game. This is a Pathfinder thing, but it could exist in D&D, no problem at the same time. I remember there's famously a description of a town that's very monstrous, and the troll does divination by like cutting open their stomach and letting their entrails come out, knowing that they're going to regenerate that, and it's going to cut. Why have both of these in the same game?
Right? Yeah.
Let's be weird. Let's be magical.
Let's be weird. Let's see. Slow natural healing. This was how healing was in D&D Next. This is very second ed. It just drags out healing for a long time. Oh wait, I'm thinking of the rest variation, but still slowing the natural healing is just, it drags out the adventuring, or the adventuring episode, and it shortens the adventuring day.
Yeah. That's
Oh man, 5 Iron Frenetic. I'm glad there are that there are some people who enjoy tracking arrows, but I am not one of them. Agreed.
I am not either. This game has already made it so easy to avoid those things. The encumbrance rules, I don't know if we've talked about them, are ridiculous.
Yeah.
If you have if you have a strength of 10, if you're an average strength person, you can walk around all day with 150 pounds on your back.
Yeah.
Easy. And because they don't want you to need to care. So this is like getting back to caring. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Oh man. All right. So through the rest, I'm just gonna plow through the rest variants really quickly. Epic heroism. Short rest is 5 minutes. Long rest is 1 hour.
Whoa.
I'm in. I'm
Whoa.
in. I'm into that. Gritty realism. Short rest is 8 hours. Long rest is 7 days. That this is for the folks who want the one combat encounter per adventuring day type of game, and that's great for them. It's not for me.
Yeah. Right. I wrote a version of one of these in my detective book because I do fundamentally like the idea from Fourth Ed, which is like you're in a dungeon and it's short rest, short rest, short rest because I got to do this dungeon today. If I go to sleep, it's going to be dangerous, right? And so the rule I wrote in there was you the case is like a dungeon, so you can take a long rest doesn't give you everything back unless you like take a level of exhaustion. You're restless. You just can't sleep because there's a case going on. What's wrong with you? And I wrote it and I like it, but at the same time, like I love epic heroism. I want us to be like supercharged Nova all the time. I think it's hard to find this balance, but I think gritty realism is way too harsh.
Yeah. That's not the game that I like to play.
No.
I think we've mentioned firearms before. I think D&D has always struggled a little bit with firearms. I don't know if I absolutely love these rules for the optional firearms that they have set up in the DMG. I think I think there's a lot of room to really improve what's going on here, but firearm rules.
Yeah, I'm glad they're here, but I don't want to use them.
Yeah, I mean the only ones I want to use are these ones, right? The futuristic weapons. Like I want to drop a laser pistol in my game, or an antimatter rifle, or a laser rifle. One of those things. But they only have one energy cell, so.
Right. It's just like having some cool grenades. Grenades are fun.
Right.
I'm happy with those.
Yeah. Well, speaking of grenades, we're into the explosive section. There are rules specifically for explosives. This is a rule that I totally forgot about before I started digging into this. I was like, oh yeah, there is a rule for like bombs and gunpowder and dynamite and grenades. It's great.
And they're super expensive at the same time. So like when they show up, it won't be all the time, depending on where you are in your campaign.
All right. Let's see here. I guess we'll cruise on over to alien technology. When adventurers find a piece of technology that isn't from their world or time period, the players might understand what the object is, but the characters rarely will.
Right.
This is that's pretty cool. Like there's a little chart for figuring out alien technology, and how it how your character kind of sorts it out. But it's just kind of a light little thing to add.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all right. I mean, when these things come up, they are fun plot devices, so we need ways to talk about them, and that's cool.
Absolutely. All right, and this is actually my favorite portion of these optional rules.
Yes.
I'm super interested in playing a game that uses all three of these options. Okay, so plot points. So what plot points are is at the beginning of each session, each player starts with one plot point. And with those plot points, you can spend it at a certain time throughout the session, and then that adjusts the way the game is going. And then once every player at the table has spent a plot point, they each get one plot point. Right?
Oh.
Right. So I think this would be a great way to play a game with a bunch of like other DMs and a bunch of other players who are just really into the idea of like, let's just see how weird this gets, right? So option one, what a twist. So a player spins a plot point, they get to add some element to the set, to the situation that the group, including them, must accept as true. So I love the example is, for example, a player can spend a plot point and state that his or her character found a secret door. An NPC appears, or a monster turns out to be a long-lost ally polymorphed into a horrid beast.
Oh, that's so good. And then everyone has to deal with that. Like that's the game you're playing.
That's the game.
That's what's true now.
that is now true. Option two. This one also great.
I like that. Hold on. There's a player who wants to spend a plot point in this way should take a minute to discuss it with everyone else and get feedback. Yeah. But like, doesn't say they have to.
No, they should. Doesn't have to. the plot thickens whenever. So the option 2, so fun, so fun. Whenever a player spends a plot point, the player to his right must add a complication to the scene. For
Hmm.
example, a player spins a plot point and decides that her character has found a secret door. The player to the right might state that opening the door triggers a magical trap that teleports the party to another part of the dungeon.
Oh, that's just mean.
Right? Yeah. Sometimes you need that special thing, and you're like, oh man, I want to spend a plot point on this. I want a treasure chest here, and then well, the person to your right gets to decide what makes that plot a little bit thicker.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Oh wow, I'm just thinking about with kids. Okay, because I've played with a lot of kids lately.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know. Okay, so I'm gonna spend my plot point. I know that there's a cabinet right there, and if I open it up, I get to my best friend from my village has been locked in there, and I'm gonna save them. And then option 2, the person to their right is like, yeah, but they're poisoned and they're gonna be dead in 5 minutes. And then it's like,
Oh
ugh,
no. Oh no.
depressing,
Yeah.
depressing. I can see some vengeance happening with this rule set.
Right. Yeah. But if you have the right table, like, oh my god, so much hilarity, so much interestingness. Okay, so
That is true.
this is the one that's a little bit
Oh,
a
jeez.
little bit of a challenge. The gods must be crazy. There is no permanent DM. Everyone makes a character, and one person starts as a DM and runs the game as normal. The person's character becomes an NPC who can tag along with the group and remain on sidelines as the group wishes. At any time, a player can spend a plot point and become the DM.
Wow. Wow. At any
At any
time.
time. So good. I mean, there's a few things like, they suggest that you don't do it in the middle of combat. You don't, things like that. It's so funny. And, and the idea is like, if you as a player haven't prepared anything, then, and you don't feel like spending a plot point to DM, the plot thickens. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
it's so good.
This is cool. I've played campaigns like this, where we're all a team. I think we played like a superhero-esque campaign, and pretty much each of us had our own set of villains. And so if one of us was DMing that day, you kind of knew who the villains were going to
Hmm.
be and what the story would be about. And then the next time we played, someone else would DM, and so the focus would shift. The campaign could continue. Our players would, one person was just sick every time,
Yeah.
or whatever,
Hmm.
NPC style. It was fun, but it's hard to decide like in the middle of a game like, so I hear your story, I can tell where you're going, I got a better idea. Wabam.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah. And
that gets a little
Aubrey
tricky.
points out in the chat, seems unlikely that a player would want to swap with a DM. And I think in most cases it's true. I think you kind of establish and set the table ahead of time that, hey, we're playing a plot point game. So what this means is like we're going to be basically freestyling this entire campaign just to kind of
Uh-huh.
see where it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This really feels like, hey, so I know you're playing D&D, but did you actually want to be playing Fiasco? Because we can do that.
Right? You know, I mean, honestly, I'm a little more interested in playing plot point D&D than Fiasco, but yeah.
That's fair enough, fair enough. But it's definitely like
Yeah.
all these rules are like there's a lot of good games out there in the world, and D&D is gonna this one is very good because it has this mechanic. Here it is. This one, bring it in, which is kind of cool. Honestly, you get this big workshop and make
Mhm.
D&D exactly what you want, which is neat.
Yeah.
This whole rule set terrifies me. But with the right table, I could get talked into it. It could be a lot of fun.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I could see myself preparing for this, like grabbing a couple of encounters and having them set, and then using some of those other ideas that we talked about before, like reskinning, puzzles with no real answers, those types of things. And it allows you to improv so much. And I could see like like I said, a table of some experienced or even inexperienced DMs. Who cares, right? But players who are more comfortable with that kind of style having a great time just playing a plot point game.
Yeah, and it's also kind of cool. It gives you an opportunity to test encounters out, right?
Hmm.
It's like maybe I prep one and I'm ready. I'm feeling good about it. I've got this great idea for a specific like cool action scene,
Hmm.
um, and it's time. It's time. I want it right now.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
I would almost do a plot point campaign as a Monster of the Week esque style
Yeah.
campaign, and then I would even say after every session you level, right? So
Yep.
you've limited it to
Yep.
20 sessions, And that way everyone knows what to prepare as far as the next level for their random encounters or leveling up their characters or that type of stuff. It goes by quickly, so you're not just stuck in it. That type of stuff.
Fiascos and firebolts. Yes, indeed. Let's play some FNF.
All right. Let's see. If you don't mind, Rich, let's knock out this next session and then we'll call it good. If that's cool with you. I know we're running a little bit over.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, cool. So combat options. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a fair amount here, but I think a fair amount of this we'll be able to talk about pretty quickly. Initiative variants. So initiative variants, there's 3 major variants that they talk about here. That's the initiative score, where it's 10 plus your dexterity modifier. Nobody rolls for initiative. That's just it. You go. That's fine. It's a little boring.
Yeah, assassins are happy, which is the bonus, and it's boring, which is the con.
Yep. Side initiative I find very dangerous. I've been to plenty of cons where the DM does side initiative and that type of stuff, and I think this is this is very, very dangerous, because if your monsters win initiative, your monsters could take out a PC like that, right? If the heroes win initiative, the heroes could take out your monsters like that, right? It does kind of, it's cool in that it allows you to build more tactics into your play, because your players go in any order whatsoever, and same with your monsters. But I don't know. I feel like side initiative is dangerous.
Right. I feel like a combat will eventually reach this point anyways, right? So the first round, it's all kind of chaotic and random, but unless I'm rolling for all of my monsters and they're all in different spots, I often find us in a spot where now, okay, my monsters go, one character goes in the middle, and then it's everybody else's turn. Yeah. So we're close to this already, so I don't see that this adds a ton. It does make that dangerous spot happen. I do like that people can mix up and be tactical and stuff, but you're trying to think about that every time. Like, ooh, how do we all decide whose turn it is? And like, that's what initiative is for, is deciding whose turn it is. Like, so this is just making it the game harder.
Yeah, I do like it for certain situations. Like, I could see ship battles, right? Like, okay, ship A does all their turn, ship B does all their turn, right? Something like that. Sure, something more on a bigger scale where you need to simplify a much larger combat. Side initiative could be good.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I would not use this for every day.
I think we touched on this previously too when we were talking about 2nd edition, and that is speed factor. This is one of those things where the idea is that the players can use their knowledge of the initiative order to influence their decisions, and then kind of taking that away a little bit. So the way you do this one, right, is before you roll initiative, you determine what you're going to do on your turn, and then you roll initiative, and then on your turn, you get to move and then do that action, or move and don't do that action. And if you don't do that action, you do no action, right? And so then you have to modify what your initiative is by speed factors in this particular one. And that's just another level of complexity. It's interesting for the 2nd edition players who liked declaring their actions before initiative, but yeah. Once again, level of complexity is just too much here.
Right. I think that's pretty skippable. I mean, it is, like you said, a cool option, but I don't need this in my game, I suppose. That's what I'll say about it. I don't see this as benefiting me.
Yeah, in 5 Iron Fanatic points out, speed factor almost makes it into another game combat-wise. Yeah, it really does. It's a sub-game within the game, and it changes a lot of things, right? So
it does. And that game is 2nd edition, and like, we're done. Yeah. Moving forward.
I mean, I love 2nd edition, but I don't want to go play it again.
Me either.
All right, so some of these action options that we're going into next, these are a ton of fun. I think most of these should be put into use in general because it's just kind of fun. Climbing onto a bigger creature. Say a small or medium creature wants to jump on a huge or gargantuan creature. Fantastic. Let's do it. Right?
Right, so I do like this. Instead of grappling, we're gonna do this series of checks to move around, Shadows of the Colossus style.
Right? Yeah. No, that seems like a ton of fun. Disarm. This one's pretty straightforward. Love this one. It's good. You don't feel so great about this one.
I don't like disarming in games generally because it takes options away from people. I think it's too played a lot of Pathfinder. It's too easy to make a character who disarms everybody and then that combat is done.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could also make a character who casts Hold Person on everybody and combat
Mhm.
is done. So I would just be wary.
Yeah, and I never in only special like enemies would be able to do it to the players, right? Like very
Yeah.
special ones.
Yeah.
No, I'm fine with disarm personally. I think it by using your action to do this, it's once again that action economy thing. In restricting a player's action economy, it's like, oh, can I do more damage or can I prevent damage? What is my choice here? And if
Yeah.
you're, if you're a strength or dexterity person, it's like, well, chances are you're going to do a lot more damage by attacking than removing the weapon. So it becomes a role-playing opportunity in my head.
Right. I would definitely say this. I wouldn't allow this to swap in for a single attack during an attack action. That this is an action on its own.
Yeah. I think this is an action.
We're gonna do that. Yeah.
Mark. I think Mark is good, but I think certain people need to have access to Mark. Not everybody.
I miss Mark.
Mark's fun. It's a fun. I like stickiness. I like making your defenders defendery. Mark is good. Overrun and shove aside are fairly similar ideas, right? One of them you move through a hostile's space and you just try to force your way. Fun, right? I think that's a fun thing. Shove aside, same thing, and shove aside essentially is using the special shove attack from the PHB, but you push them aside, right? More messing with the battlefield. I'm a tactics guy. I love the battle map. It's fantastic.
I love that.
Go ahead.
I love that they have these in there, but they are so simple. It's just we'll make an athletics check. Okay, make a acrobatics check. And that's what happens.
Yep.
So I like that they're spelled out, but also that they are simple to really work with.
Yeah. Oh, and then tumble is in there as well, and a lot of a lot of players who played a lot of Pathfinder are going to do this, right? So, let's see.
Want to know how it works?
Let's see. Hidden cover. This isn't horribly complex. You're hiding behind cover. Someone shoots at you. It hits the cover instead. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing breaking here. You could use it like if it misses the person who's behind another person, that it hits that person. You can do stuff with it, but once again, I think it's complicated. It slows down combat. It also makes combat a little less engaging for ranged characters.
Yeah, it's reasonable.
Cleaving through characters. I keep going back and forth on this one.
Yeah.
Like I love the idea like a level 17 barbarian could cleave and take out 4 goblins at once.
Mm-hmm.
But then that kind of takes away from the idea that was part of 5th edition D&D, where that a large enough group of goblins could be a threat to heroic characters. And if you're plowing through like 5 or 6 of them at a time because you're cleaving in each attack, it kind of takes that away, right?
Yeah. It also, I will say, I think that this, I'd have to dig in, but it changes the numbers game quite a bit. Like it changes the action economy, encounter math. So this feels like it's going to make it more difficult for a DM. They're going to be tempted to throw more monsters at you, knowing you can like cleave through them a little bit faster. I don't know if that's good. It says to use it to speed up fights. And that is true. I try to make my fights about 2 rounds these days. So maybe that would help. I'm going to go back and forth on that. I think it's a cool idea. I'm not sure if I want to use it.
I would almost make this a feat, like a custom feat.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
You have the ability to cleave. If you totally knock something to, from full hit points to 0 in one attack, you get to continue your attack forward.
Right, and I do see some of these that do a little bit of damage to the folks around, like the other monsters within range. But this could totally be like, I do 20 damage. Well, that one's only takes 2, and they're down.
Cool.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'll think about it.
I don't like injuries.
No, I don't.
However, I will say I would use injuries in a game, but I would not use these injuries. So, for example, if we were going to use injuries like lose an eye, you have disadvantage on wisdom perception checks that rely on sight. But then I would give some kind of bonus for that too, right? You lost a watch, but now you have advantage on intimidation checks, right? I think anytime you're penalizing the character it's not good unless there is a trade-off where they're getting some kind of bonus. And
Yeah.
I'd have to really think about this a lot, and talk to the player before I gave him one, right? Because there's
Oh,
a whole
sure.
level
Yeah.
of all of this stuff that goes on. So I don't like injuries in general, but if there was a cool story around it and you worked with the player on it, like like lose an eye, right? Or horrible scar. Like horrible scar is pretty close, right? This is exactly what I was saying. You have disadvantage on persuasion checks, but you have advantage on intimidation checks.
Yeah.
Like it, if it's something like some kind of story element there, I think that's good.
Yeah, they could be cool for that. I'm with you. When I tell people how short rests work and getting your hit dice, I'm talking about people meditating and you catching your
Hmm.
breath and you wrapping, a bandage on
Yeah.
maybe. But there's, hit points are so nebulous. It's just not clear what they are
Right.
exactly. That the idea that like they are nebulous, but also if you take a critical hit, you're going to get you're going to lose an arm or something, right? It's just I don't like that
Hmm.
synergy. It doesn't seem to match
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So, but I do agree with you about story points. That could be fun.
Right. Yeah. And 5 Iron Fanatic says that they would make them rarer than that they're set here. If you get hit with a crit, roll on a d20. If you roll a 1, then you take an injury. And right, and,
Right.
that makes it a little less of a penalty because it's 5% chance of getting crit, 5% chance of rolling that 1, right? So that's really low. But still, like, I wouldn't use this chart. I would work with the player. I would say, okay, you got
Yeah.
hit here. Here's what I'm thinking. How does that sound to you? And if they're like, that really cripples my character, it cripples my build, it doesn't feel good, I'd be like, okay, well then we don't have to do anything. Yeah, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with that.
Massive damage and system shock have always been dumb, and they continue to be dumb.
Right. Again, this is making something that is nebulous very not
Yeah.
nebulous. And I don't really like
No,
that.
I don't need this, especially like if you're a wizard, like level 1, you're a wizard with 8 hit points. How many goblins are going to hit you for 4 hit points? All of them? Yeah, so
Yeah.
how much
Uh-huh.
system shock are you going to be rolling with your piddly dump stat of constitution? Yeah, no, that's yeah,
Right.
not great.
Oh. Oh my gosh. Do you remember the days when a cat could take out a wizard
Well,
at
yeah,
first
you want to
level?
bring that back? Let's do some massive damage.
Yay. All right.
All right, morale. So, here's the funny thing about morale is I kind of use it, but I haven't codified it in this type of way. And even this, it's not like super codified, but I don't know. It's an okay rule. If you need something to help you with that, I think morale is fantastic. I
Yeah.
tend to like my enemies to either be like so fanatic that they all fight to the death, or if they are cunning, then maybe they'll tactically retreat and become a thorn in the player's side later on down the road. But I think story wise is where morale goes.
Yeah. And exactly when I write tactics for an encounter, it's going to say exactly which one of these it is. I'm not going to kind of just leave it up to the DM to sort out because I care about that. Absolutely. That's a big part of the story. So this group is kind of cowardly. The first time someone drops to half health, they're going to decide whether they want to stick around or not. If the group's leader, I like the group's leader being reduced because that's huge. The one I never think about is if the creatures in the group are surprised. That would be a lot of
Hmm.
fun to see. But they would just happen. It would be written into the
Yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah.
Fun things to think about.
But maybe this works in a plot point game where you need a certain level of codified rules that you normally need, like morale.
Well, that's
Yeah,
fair.
I don't know. I don't know. All right. Well, I think that's probably a good place for us to call it this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got through quite a few of the variant rules. There's a bunch more in the DMG. This was a great way. This was a great way to highlight some of the interesting things in the DMG that you could use and you can modify and bring into your home game. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy with what we discussed and what we found.
Yeah, I love going through these. Just it's a really neat way. Like I said, I never read the DMG for how can I change my game. It's always like, oh, I need this at magic item list or I need a
Mhm.
monster list or
Yeah.
something. So it's fun to take a look at these every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Is what do you have coming up this next week?
Oh, naps all day. Because camp is over, so I'm pretty excited about that. This week is mostly going to be back to writing. Because there are some things I need to get ready. I need to write a set of factions for the upcoming Academy After School program that starts in September. So this week is transitioning week. There's no werewolf. There's no nothing
Oh
else.
man.
Just get some things written, bust them
Yeah.
out. And I still need to take all the lessons I've learned from teaching kids all summer. I was writing this adventure to give out as part of the Kickstarter, and as I ran camp, I just kept realizing like I could, this needs to be different. Like I have some new ideas, so I'll be reformulating that this week as well, and that should go out to backers hopefully very soon.
Nice, nice. And for me this week, it's going to mostly be let's see here. So there's increased legendary drops on Borderlands 3, and there's a whole new event happening on Destiny 2. So
Oh dang, that's
uh,
great. Oh, I love Solstice of Heroes.
and I just finally wrapped up the Final Fantasy VII remake this week. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a video game week for me. But
Nice.
tomorrow we're gonna be right back here, continuing our discussion on the cleric. We're gonna go ahead and jump into the domains and dig into the domains and talk about those a little bit. And for the folks who are watching us on YouTube, we stream every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and the occasional Monday nights around 6ish. So hop on our Discord and follow us there. And if you're watching us all on YouTube, also make sure to subscribe and follow and all those fun things.
That thing,
Stuff.
that
Yeah,
thing,
they're
that thing.
they're over there somewhere. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you all, if not tomorrow, next week.
So